Hey guys, what is up? It is the Fast Break Report here, bringing you guys another vlog. So, I want to talk about the Indiana Pacers because there is some very interesting reports coming out about players that the Pacers are targeting specifically, and it shows that this team is maybe not done. We still got 2 days left here until the NBA trade deadline. I believe it's at 3 o'clock on, Thursday. So on Thursday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I think, is the NBA trade deadline. But the Pacers have been linked to Royce O'Neal of the Brooklyn Nets and Isaac Okoro of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And if you've been watching this team for any given amount of time, you would know that they need defense. They really need like a strong, solidified wing. They arguably need a third option. It just, the team really isn't where we want it to be, and it doesn't look like it's where the front office wants it to be either at the moment. Recently, we've noticed some lineup changes out of Rick Carlisle. The most recent lineup, I believe, was Tyrese Halliburton, Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Nesmith, Pascal Siakam, and Miles Turner, which seems like a defensive lineup if I've ever seen one for the Pacers. But it's very obvious they're trying to emphasize defense in some capacity. And we've been saying for a while, Paul George is like the ideal candidate for this team. A guy who can score, a guy who can play defense. There are Pacers fans who simply don't want him because of what happened in the past. That's fine. But one thing that I think is important to point out here is Paul George still has not signed a contract extension with the Los Angeles Clippers, and there's 2 days left here in the NBA trade deadline. I would not be surprised if Paul George becomes available on Thursday or tomorrow, or even end of today. Paul George's scoring has dropped since they've acquired James Harden. He is still one of the best two-way players in the league. He's averaging 20 points a game right now instead of, I think, 22 or 24 is what he was averaging prior to the Harden trade. He was leading the league in steals. I don't know if he still is, like steals per game. But the fact of the matter is Paul George is still a very good player. Regardless of if Pacers fans want him or not, the fact of the matter is he's still a solid player. And Paul George, ironically enough, even though we've traded him away, is a guy that we really, really need. And there's actually there's an interview Paul George recently did saying that, he wasn't a mature player when he was with the Pacers. He admitted that. He's like, I've matured a lot. He says, I could have handled that situation a lot better than what I did. It almost seems like, when I heard this, I was thinking to myself, it sounds almost as if Paul George wishes he could come back to Indiana. And I know there's going to be Pacers fans who say, no way, there's no chance. But Tyrese Halliburton has been on his podcast more than any other player. Like, I don't know if people know that or not, but the guy who's been on PG's podcast the most has been Tyrese Halliburton. And honestly, now that we have Pascal Siakam, we have Tyrese Halliburton, obviously, I would not be shocked if Paul George actually wants to play here. I would not be surprised if he refuses to sign a contract with the Los Angeles Clippers and, just tells them flat out, I want to go back to the Pacers. We have a point guard. We have I think we have the best bench in the NBA. We have Pascal Siakam. Miles can finally play the way he's supposed to play. There's a lot of positives to a guy like Paul George joining our roster. Now, granted, we're not able to trade for Paul George. I just want you guys to know that. We cannot trade for Paul George without including Buddy Hield and Miles Turner. And being that Pascal Siakam wanted to play with Miles Turner, I have a feeling we're not trading Miles Turner. Okay, so we can kind of get that thought out of our head immediately. But the other two guys that we're eyeing are Royce O'Neal and Isaac Okoro. And if you've been on the channel for a long time, a couple months ago, I started making trade videos saying that, the Pacers really need defense, a guy they could trade for is Isaac Okoro. Isaac Okoro is shooting 37% from 3 this year, and he's a lockdown defender. Like, he's a very good perimeter defender. He's a very young guy. We've made Obi Toppin available, so honestly, a swap for Isaac Okoro for Obi Toppin just straight up would work. I've seen a lot of Cleveland fans ask why the Cleveland Cavaliers would do this, and it's simply because they need the cap space. They could re-sign Isaac Okoro, but that means letting Donovan Mitchell potentially walk, or Jared Allen, or Evan Mobley, one of the, any of those guys. They've already re-signed Darius Garland. But if you are the Cleveland Cavaliers, I'm pretty sure you care more about having money available to bring back Donovan Mitchell than you do bring back Isaac Okoro. Especially when you consider that they've been on a bit of a tear recently. They're currently the 3rd seed, I believe, in the East after last night. They have 31 wins. So they're a team that's like, yeah, they're going to be looking to save cap space wherever they can. Maybe a guy like Obi Toppin allows them to have a backup 4 that is maybe not as expensive as a guy like Isaac Okoro. I don't know. But it's just the idea. Isaac Okoro, I think, would be a nice fit on the Pacers. He's young. He can defend. He's basically a 3&D guy, almost a little bit like Aaron Nesmith. So he's nice. Royce O'Neal is a guy that I think is a little more likely for us to acquire. Royce O'Neal is old. Like, he's not old, but he's older. He's like 30 years old. He's a typical 3&D forward. Does he move the needle for us? Not really. I don't even think Isaac Okoro moves the needle for us a whole lot. But if we could find a way to land one of those guys for cheap, it's not really the end of the world. I'm assuming the reason these two guys are brought up is because of Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin would be a guy that you could send to both teams and get one of those two guys back, and it would be a trade that all parties benefit from. But there's that, and honestly, like the generous thought is the idea that if you're being extremely generous, is that Paul George will have maybe come back to Indy in the offseason. We would have cap space to bring him back, not a whole lot, but we would have cap space to bring him back if we trade Buddy Hield to somebody, or do a sign and trade with Buddy Hield with another team. I'm at the point now where I don't know if Buddy Hield's going to get traded. I don't know if this is going to be a guy that we just keep on the roster and then let him go where he wants to go in the offseason, just renounce our rights to him. Because I know a lot of people are worried about the team chemistry aspect of getting rid of Buddy Hield, which makes sense. But just the idea the Pacers don't look like they're done. Obviously, Mikal Bridges would be a nice pickup, but it seems like the Brooklyn Nets are reluctant to get rid of him. But I do want to commend the front office because at least they're trying. That's the one thing we're getting from this, with all the reports of Isaac Okoro and Royce O'Neal. At least we know that the front office is looking for somebody who is a capable 3&D guy. And, a guy like Mikal Bridges would be ideal. But the problem is a lot of teams that have that prototypical 3&D star player on their roster are not willing to give them up. That's the thing. Like, it's one position in the NBA that teams will not give up on unless you blow their fucking socks off with an offer. Even the Nets, even though their future is bleak, okay, even with Mikal Bridges, like, they're getting offered 5 first-round picks for the guy plus stuff and still saying no, so that should give you a bit of an idea of where the NBA is at with 3&D wings. There's not a lot of them, and the teams that have them consider them extremely valuable because they are extremely valuable. Isaac Okoro would be a nice guy to develop, but the thing is, I think we can all agree we're kind of tired of development guys. Like, we have enough development talent on our roster. Jalen Smith has been very good, but we still have Andrew Nembhard, we still have Ben Mathurin, Aaron Nesmith looks like he's coming into his own, Obi Toppin, Jarris Walker, the list goes on and on of guys that we have on our roster that need minutes and playing time in order to see what they truly become. So really, Isaac Okoro would be good. Is he ideal? I don't really know. I don't know if he's a guy that, moves the needle for us immediately. I would assume no, but the guys that would are guys that we probably can't acquire. Even a Brandon Ingram from the New Orleans Pelicans seems like it's highly unlikely. Herb Jones is a guy that would be nice too. Herb Jones is out there, but he's another guy that I just don't know if we can get him. He's a good 3&D guy this year. He's always been good on defense, but the three-point shot has started to come around. Dorian Finney-Smith is a guy, but like I said, these are all, I would say low-level tier 3&D guys. Dorian Finney-Smith, Herb Jones, Royce O'Neal, Isaac Okoro. Like, they're all low-level guys that do what you're looking for. But, the big fish, the Mikal Bridges, the Paul George, it was a swing and a miss on OG Anunoby. Like, the bigger fish out there are going to be guys that I don't think we can trade for. And if we do get one of them, it will probably be in free agency. But keep an eye on Paul George. I'm just going to say that. The idea that Paul George still hasn't signed a contract extension with the Clippers makes me think one of two things. One, he doesn't want to go back there, or two, the Clippers aren't willing to pay him what he's actually worth because of the drop in production numbers. I mean, he's averaging about 20 points per game right now, but that's because Harden and Kawhi have been getting most of the shots. Paul George has effectively become like the third guy, and I wonder if Paul George wants a max contract extension like Kawhi Leonard's. But, obviously, like, the Clippers are maybe trying to use his numbers to maybe fuck him out of some money. And I have a feeling like maybe Paul George isn't into that. Also, the other thing to consider here as well is Paul George is 33. I'm assuming Paul George would like to win a ring before he retires. And I think the Pacers offered a better opportunity for him to do that than the Clippers at the current point in time. When you consider that going into this offseason, they're only going to have 7 guys being retained on their roster, they're maybe going to have to put something else around James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, and without Paul George, who's to say that team is going to be as good as it is now? Even with as good as it is now, I don't really know if they're capable of beating a team like the Denver Nuggets, right? Or even the Minnesota Timberwolves if they draw that matchup. There's a couple teams in the West where it's like even the Lakers, as bad as they are, it's still LeBron and it's still Anthony Davis and it's still Austin Reeves. And if they pull off a DeJounte Murray trade, who knows? Like they're a team that could be even better. So the chips are really not set in stone yet in the NBA. Even with 2 days left here for the trade deadline, anything could happen. You could see a team that was maybe the 10th seed at the trade deadline make one trade and end up in the top 5 or the top 3. It's very possible. It's happened in the past. Even with the Knicks, they just traded for OG Anunoby, and they're on a 7-8 game win streak, even with Julius Randle being out. So picking up OG Anunoby was a big deal for the Knicks. And that's what I mean by one trade sometimes can instantly make a team better. It doesn't always happen. It doesn't always happen where a guy's like a seamless fit like that. But it just goes to show, those moves happen. So tell me what you guys think about this down below in the comment section below. One thing also I'd like to bring up real quick before I get out of here is Miles Bridges is available. That's one thing I've also figured out as well. If the Pacers are going to go after any young small forward rather than Isaac Okoro or Royce O'Neal or Dorian Finney-Smith, or Herb Jones, Miles Bridges, I honestly, I know people don't like him because of the off-court stuff, but I've watched this dude play a lot this season because he's the only guy on the Hornets right now at the moment, keeping them afloat. Him and Brandon Miller have really come into their own. And we're gonna trade for any young player. Miles Bridges is the guy that I'm looking out for. Miles Bridges is a guy that, and it's crazy because Miles Bridges is a guy that I think that we could actually acquire. Anyway, tell me what you guys think about this down below in the comment section below. A like helps me out. Subscribe if you guys want to see more on the Fast Break Report. And I'm out of this motherfucker. Peace, guys.